Hello, how's everyone doing today? Good? Awesome. I have a quick question for everyone in the room. How many of you have ever been asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay, so pretty much everyone. So I have a little bit of trouble with this question because I've gotten asked this question a lot. What do you want to be when you grow up? And the trouble that I have with this question is that I always ask the people asking me that question, define grown up. Are we putting an age limit on that? Does 18 mean you're grown up? Does 40 mean you're grown up? What means grown up? And then the second problem that I have with this question is, what do you want to be? Singular. As if I can really only be one thing when I grow up. And then I guess the third reason why I have a problem with this question is because every time that people ask me this question, I really had no idea what the answer to it was. I was always interested in music from a really young age. I was always interested in weather. And at one point I thought that I would go on and study music. At another point I thought that I would go on and become a meteorologist. And in reality, none of that happened. But I want to share a little bit of my story with you all today. I grew up in a state called Arizona in the United States with a great family. My parents both met at IBM in the accounting department in the States. And since they had worked for IBM, when I was growing up, they came home and they gave me this device. And I'll never forget, we had one room in the house that was one of the smaller rooms in the house, but it was designated the, quote, computer room. It was the place that my brother and I got to go about 30 minutes a day each, and we got to play around with this device. And when I was little, we used this mostly for playing games, educational games for the most part. But as I started playing a lot of these games, I started wondering, how could I create my own game? Are there things that I could do to go and build a game that other people could play? And so at a fairly young age, I started realizing, all right, if I want to go and create these games, I'm going to have to learn how to code. And now at the time, I was in high school and I was going to an all-girls school in Arizona, and we had only had one programming class at that school. It was a basic HTML, CSS programming class, and I took it. And quickly after taking that class, I realized this is something that I actually really enjoy. This idea that I can have an idea for something and then sit down at my computer, code a few lines, and then I can see it appear on the screen was really, really fascinating to me at a young age. Kind of that immediate gratification of being able to build something all on my own. And so I dived in, and I went online, YouTube, and a lot of different resources to learn how to code. And finally, my brother, who's 2 years older, the two of us sat down one day and we were discussing, and we said, hey, if we want to go and build something that's our own, what should we go and build? And at the time, my brother and I came up with an idea for a website where we wanted to be able to store usernames and passwords online. Because how many people in this room have forgotten what your password is one time or another? If you don't raise your hand, I know you're probably lying, but that's okay. So we said we wanted to go out and build this website that allowed people to store all their usernames and passwords and log into everything with one username and password online. And the summer after I graduated from high school, my brother and I kind of worked up the courage to go to our parents and say, this is a business that we want to start. Now, my dad, kind of hearing the business pitch, comes back to my brother and I, and he says, all right, if you want to start this business and not go get an internship like all your friends, you're going to have to move out of the house and learn how how to be financially independent so that you know the value of a dollar. So at 18 years old, my dad saying, hey, if you want to start a business, you need to move out. I sit there with my brother and we discuss, and quickly we decide, this is what we're going to do. We're going to pack up our bags, we're going to get outside of our comfort zone, and we're going to move to South Central Los Angeles, because at the time we thought California is where all this stuff is happening. And we found an apartment with cheap rent, so we said we're going to pack up our bags, go there, and start this business. So at 18 years old, we did exactly that. My brother and I piled into a car, drove to California from Arizona, rented out an apartment that was a 2-bedroom apartment for $900 US dollars a month. And we had done the math before that said if we rented out one of the other rooms to a friend, then we would only have to pay $450 a month, and if my brother and I split that in half, it was $225 a month for 3 months in between my high school and college years. We could afford that. So my brother and I hunkered down that summer on building the business that we called My Social Cloud to store all these usernames and passwords. And while we were working on this, one morning that summer, I saw a tweet on Twitter from Sir Richard Branson. And one more poll, how many people know who Richard Branson is? Okay, so pretty much everyone. For those who don't know, he started the Virgin Group. So Virgin Galactic, going to space, Virgin Airlines, Virgin Trains. And I saw a tweet on Twitter from Richard Branson that said, enjoy intimate cocktails in Miami, donate $2,000 to charity. And as you can see, the next email address, or the next tweet under that gave an email address. And so I went ahead and emailed it, and I said, I'm Stacey Ferreira. I'm 18 years old, so I'm not legally old enough to drink cocktails with you in the United States. But I would absolutely love to come to Miami with my brother and meet you to learn about how you grew your businesses and how we might be able to grow ours. Stayed up all night and got an email back from the secretary. And she said, if you can donate $4,000, $2,000 a piece for each of you, and be in Miami, now geographically across the country from the United States, if you can be in Miami in 48 hours, then you can meet with him. So, remember my brother and I are these broke college kids whose parents said you need to move out of the house and learn how to be financially independent. But the thing that I kept thinking was, what a great learning opportunity. So I did the only thing that I was thinking I could do at the time with a countdown clock. I picked up the phone and I called my dad. And I said, hey Dad. Now remember, this is 2011, so I said, hey Dad, I know that you don't know what Twitter is, but there's this amazing opportunity to go meet Richard Branson in Miami and learn from him about how he grew his businesses. Can I borrow $4,000 from you? And now at this point in the story, you all know my dad, so you know I'm not going to get off easy, but he's there on the other end of the phone, and he said, write up a proposal for me. Why do you need the money? Where is the money going? And most importantly, I want a payment plan on an Excel spreadsheet of how you're going to pay me back. So I'm looking at the clock. I sit down at the computer. My brother and I type up this proposal and we send it off to my dad. He picks up the phone and calls us back, and he says, all right, here's the deal. $4,000 is a lot of money. You have two options. Option number one, I will loan you the $4,000 with the one stipulation that you have to pay me back in 3 months. By the time that you step foot on college campus, you have to pay me back. Option number 2, you don't take the loan. It's a lesson in money management. So me, being the young, optimistic person that I am, I said, all right, I'm taking the money, we're gonna go. So my brother and I got on a plane and flew to Miami. And over the course of the time that we were in Miami, there were 2 different nights where we got to meet with Richard Branson in a room that was probably no bigger than this stage that I'm standing on. And those nights, we got to go around and talk about who we were, why we were there, and the projects that we were working on. And my brother and I stood up and introduced ourselves and told everyone about who we were and why we were there. But the thing perhaps that I was most amazed about at the event was that after the event and after we all got to introduce ourselves, I went up to Branson's secretary and said, so how many slots did you have for people to come to this event? And she said, we had 25. Of the 25 slots, only 18 people had responded to that tweet. So only 18 people were in the room. And that created a really important lesson for me at a young age in life, which was keep your eyes open. And even if an opportunity seems like it's unattainable, or why would you get chosen for that thing? The worst that can happen is someone can say no. And so after I got done asking the secretary this question, my brother comes up, and my brother, he says, all right, we should go ask Branson for his email address so that we can keep in touch with him afterwards. So we hurry off to Branson and we say, hey, can we have your email address so that we can continue to learn from you after the event? And he writes it down. And my brother at that point runs back over to the secretary and says, is this really his email address? She says, yeah, it is, so keep it close. And so the rest of those nights that we were there for the event, we stayed close to Branson, learning from him, hearing him talk about how he started his businesses, some of the challenges that he had, and things that he overcame throughout growing them. And my brother and I flew back after those events to Los Angeles, where we had started our company, more eager than ever before to hunker down and really get this thing off the ground. So we built the initial prototype, launched it, started getting traction with our first initial customers, and then we went back over email to Branson and we said, thank you so much for the time in Miami. We have 3 questions for you on how we might be able to help grow our business. So we wrote these out in an email and sent them off to him. And again, we got an email response. And he said, I'm going to introduce you to my friend, Gerry Murdoch, who runs something called Insight Venture Partners. So Gerry Murdoch is a venture capitalist in the States, and at the request of Branson, Gerry got on the phone with us, and a few days later flew where he lives in Colorado, flew from Colorado to Los Angeles to meet with my brother and I. He met with us, and over the course of an entire day, we sat down and discussed the business, how we'd come up with the idea, what we were doing to actually build the technology, how we were gaining traction. And then he asked us, you guys are young, what are you doing about college? So we answered all of these questions, and that night went out to dinner with Gerry, and Gerry sat us down, and he said, I have a deal for you. I talked to Branson, I talked to my friend Alex Welch, and the 3 of us would like to invest $1.2 million into your business to help you get it started. The deal was either take the money or don't. And now at 18 years old, this is a big decision for someone. It's a big responsibility, and at the same time, it came with a stipulation that I would not go on to complete college. And ultimately, I opted, again, to take the deal. And if you're wondering, yes, after we took the deal, I did pay my dad back the $4,000. And after that point, went on a journey over the course of the next few years in building my own startup. And the mantra and motto that I lived by was this: try, fail, learn, repeat. Kept doing that over and over and over again, and eventually built the business up, and in 2013, sold the business to Reputation.com out in Silicon Valley, and moved my life from Los Angeles up to San Francisco to work at Reputation.com. And after that point, I started working at Reputation, and again, a lot of people came to me saying, Stacey, you're 20 years old, you just sold your first business, what do you want to be when you grow up? And again, at that point, I still didn't quite have the answer. So I went on my own journey, and while I was working at Reputation, I decided to publish a book with a good friend of mine named Gerry called 2 Billion Under 20. That's all about the millennial generation and people's stories from around the world of how they've chosen what it is they've chosen to do in their life and in their career. And after publishing this book, I started going on even more of my own journey to understand what is it that I really want to do throughout the course of the rest of my life. And in order to answer these questions, the first person that I talked to in my own personal life about how they chose what it is they wanted to do was my grandma. And my grandma, when I was talking to her, she said, you know, Stacey, when I was young and deciding what I wanted to do, really what made me decide what I wanted to do was simply what was going to pay the bills. And my grandma worked 42 years in a factory. She immigrated from Portugal over to the United States and worked to put her 3 sons through college. And for her, it was what paid the bills. And then, kind of similar, when I talked to my mom about how she chose what it is that she wanted to do, my mom said, you know, kind of similar. It was a mixture of what I was interested in and what paid the bills, kind of a mix of both. And my mom worked about 4 jobs throughout her entire career, first in the accounting department, and then she got a promotion, and then she took some time off, says unemployed, but for anyone who's raised a family, you know that that's not really unemployment. That's a lot of hard work. Raised my brother and I, and then re-entered into the workforce. And then I started looking at my generation. And again, talking to a bunch of my peers. And I realized that today, more than ever before, the way that people choose what it is they do in their career is simply what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, and things that make an impact. And one of the things that was really interesting to me when I was talking to my generation was that people were interested in these things that made an impact, but they were also interested in things like work-life balance and flexibility. And that learning is what led me into what I'm working on next. A few years ago, I started a company called Forge that empowers people to work by having flexible schedules. So we work with retail, restaurants, hotels, to be able to allow people to, at the click of a button, pick and choose exactly the hours that they work in the establishments that they've been trained to work. And throughout this, I've learned that the definition of work today is really changing. And when people ask me this question, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's okay, going back to a few other slides, to say, there's not one thing I want to be, but simply a lot of things that I want to explore throughout my career. So the thing that I want to ask all of you to do today as you walk away is any time that you encounter one of your children, one of your children's friends, or even yourself, don't ask the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Instead, ask them the question, what are all the things that you want to explore throughout your life? And how can I help you explore those things? I'm Stacey Ferreira. Thank you.
questions. Many of you have been asking who will be the next speaker signing books during the next coffee break at the bookstore today. The answer is Hug Lipton. Don't miss it. Now, let's focus with Stacey on entrepreneurship and millennials. Question number 1. What was one of the toughest challenges about being a young person starting your own business?
I think one of the toughest challenges about being a young person starting a business that I encountered not only in my first business, but now with Forge 2, is that I find it hard sometimes to lead people when you haven't had in your career a ton of great leaders as examples to learn from directly within the work environment. So one of the things that I've been kind of trying to do a lot in my own career is surround myself with mentors and people that I can learn from in order to be a better leader within my own company.
Thank you, Stacey. Question number 2. What are the 2 things companies can start this year to retain millennials?
Yeah, a big question. So a few things that companies can do to retain millennials. I think one, kind of going back to the speech, it's offering flexibility. Being flexible with the work hours that people have to work. I think the notion of the 9-to-5 job is going away. And then second of all, I think one of the big things is allow people to do meaningful work within your company. And what I mean by that is that it's through studies that have been done, millennials are attracted to jobs that allow them to have a broader and wider impact, not only within their job and their career, but on society as a whole. And so I think sending folks from your organization to things like Singularity University, opening their eyes to how they can create impact is really, really important.
Question number 3. About the importance of failing. When does failing become a positive aspect in order to reach your goals?
Yeah, so failure. This is an attitude that I think we need to change throughout a lot of cultures across the world. A lot of people are afraid of failure, saying that it's bad. And the philosophy that I have is that as long as you are learning from that failure and becoming a better person, that's all that matters at the end of the day. And so you want to minimize the times that you kind of fail massively, meaning the times that can hurt your company in a massive way, but overall, failure is a great thing, as long as you are learning from it.
Thank you very much, Stacey.
Thank you.